town may be kind of small, but these folks have big smiles and big hearts, and they know what it is to have simple fun down our way, where old-fashioned singing and homey gatherings make living mighty pleasant.
Since we're all strangers to each other, let's get acquainted with a drink, shall we?
That was what I would send to people. Yeah. And say, hey, listen to this. If you like the way we did this, we will do something similar for you as an artist coming on. And, I genuinely wanted them to listen. It's not just, hey, evidence that we talked to somebody cool. Like, listen to the conversation. Don't just look at the name and go, oh, Matt Mahaffey, interesting guy. Listen to the conversation, because we went all sorts of wonderful places. Here's the YouTube link to these two chuckle fucks talking about their podcast.
Hey, trolling.
So here we are wrapping up season 4, and what a season it was. Geoff, I think you just said you were gobsmacked.
Gobsmacked. Because it wasn't just one episode that was amazing. Every episode has some magical element. And I tell you what, the most gratifying thing of season 4 for me, and maybe you tell me what the most gratifying thing for you was, but for me, it seems like we have this really lovely core group of listeners that are going to listen to the podcast pretty much every episode. And, that's wonderful to have. That's very gratifying.
For sure.
But when an artist shares the podcast on their social media and their fans sink their teeth into it, I think because we try to go a little deeper down the rabbit hole, and because we research and probably end up touching on stuff that if they've done other podcasts or other interviews, it seems like we always find some little angle that is unique. And we hear from those people. Like when I get emails that say, hey, I'm this band's biggest fan in the world. Thank you for doing this. That makes the lack of $1 million paycheck coming my way from Spotify okay. I mean, I'd like the $1 million paycheck from Spotify. I'm open to it. But really, when people message us and say, hey, this was really great, I appreciate you talking, and especially when they call out specific questions. Like when you asked about that, I lit up. That makes my whole world.
That's great. I don't hear too much from those folks because I don't. I just don't. But
you hate Facebook.
Hate is an awfully strong word. I'm still learning. But what I get, Jimmy said as much. He said, you guys have a way of elevating the conversation, and I think that's true. So I hear from the artists who they're like, hey, I really like that episode. I like the way you put it together. And it's really that means a lot when because that tells me they, 1, listened to it and 2, enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And to that end, if we can just, if they share it, it's just even better,
Heck yeah. I mean, when, and it doesn't even have to be them. I mean, a lot of times they have, and maybe it's your aversion to Facebook. I will jump into fan groups on Facebook. The Toad the Wet Sprocket fan group on Facebook is an amazing group of people. They're really lovely. And some of them pinged me after we shared it and were like, this was amazing. I can't believe you got him to talk about. And I don't remember what element it was of that conversation, but we got a couple of really nice comments from the Glenn Phillips episode.
Awesome. No, I mean, pardon me. I don't hate Facebook. Yeah, I do, but it's just, I get overwhelmed with it, and I don't, it's way too overwhelming. My brain can't process, as ADD as I am, it can't process everything that Facebook does. I'm like, So,
I think if you curate the experience, if you go in and you seek those groups out, because the fan groups are there to appreciate the music. So there's a fan group for uh, Biss and Toad the Wet Sprocket and a lot of the artists that we have talked to. And then there are broader fan groups like and I'll if we're gonna put this out there, I'll go ahead and name drop. There's a group called Archers of Loaf to Zampano that all they focus on is music from the 90s. And we've interviewed a lot of people in season 4 that were in their wheelhouse. And not only do we get great feedback from those Facebook groups, sometimes we take ideas from them. I mean, what the conversations are percolating in those groups and the artists that they talk about. Sometimes I'll make note and go, "Oh yeah, I remember that. I remember that record. That would be an awesome person to have on the podcast." And the next thing you know, we send an invite out and we end up with more magic.
yeah. Let's let me ask you this. And it's going to be tough. And I know that ahead of time.
Oh dear.
Yep, I know. Because there are so many to choose from.
You're going to ask me to pick a favorite child, aren't you?
I am going to ask for a just one particular highlight. The first thing that comes to your mind. You can change it by the end of the conversation.
Man, I don't know. Because we don't invite artists on that you and I aren't interested in. I mean, we're interested in all of their music, and we love.
Sure.
I have a deep affinity for Biss, and I know that's not a group that is a household name, but at one point I think I owned everything that you could own from that band that was released in the United States.
Wow.
And because they're from Scotland, there's some stuff that's just really hard to track down. But I really had a pretty impressive collection of 7 inches and vinyl, and I thought that entire conversation with Manda about Biss and their experience, and being written into a cartoon and the Powerpuff Girls thing, but I think getting outside of that, because that's what everybody wants to know. Like, tell me about the Powerpuff Girls.
All right.
But talking about the Riot Girl influences and, getting to play with Sleater-Kinney and Bikini Kill, it was a very satisfying hour with her that I enjoyed. That now there's other stuff that we did in season 4 that I think is maybe more interesting, like on a mass appeal level. Like the Glenn Phillips is just an interesting dude and a very kind guy.
Absolutely.
That was one of the really refreshing themes of season 4, was everybody was really damn nice.
They sure were. Yeah,
Linus Dotson's one of the nicest guys I've talked to. And I think you hear that in his music. There's a kindness to it that's just lovely.
Well, I'm going to give you my highlight.
What's yours? Yeah, because I have
It's no single episode. It's just the first thing that pops to mind is that moment. Now, if you're watching, well, you probably are watching this on the YouTube. This is generally where I sit when we talk to the guests, And behind me, you can see that duct tape. It's a duck wrapped in tape. Been there the whole time. It's always in the mise en scene, And Chad was the only one to be like, is that a duck wrapped in tape? And I'm like, you are the first person to notice that and actually acknowledge that. I really enjoyed that. And, I always love talking to Jimmy.
You love Jimmy Ashurst, man.
He's
great.
He is I wrote something. I called him the ambassador of rock and roll.
Yeah.
He's just great.
Mr. Microphone.
Hey, what's that?
Well, you set the dial on your FM radio and testing.
I'm on the radio!
There are no attaching wires, so you're free to move around.
Hey, good looking. We'll be back to pick you up later.
What's also fun to me is when we invite someone on and they vet us when they go and they listen to other episodes.
Yeah.
And when, because there's often there's what people don't recognize or know is that there's a lot of stuff that hits the cutting room floor. Like, you spend a significant amount of time editing this show. And a lot of times that's front end where we're just welcoming people on and getting comfortable before we officially begin the interview. We had more than one person come on and say, yeah, I listened to the Chad Fisher interview and wow, is that guy interesting? Or I listened to the John Strom interview and that was terrific. So to hear them talk about one another is interesting to me. And unfortunately, our listeners of the podcast don't get access to that. But for you and I think it's a very nice nod that the stuff that we think is interesting, their peers, the other musicians think is interesting too.
Yeah. What's also interesting is the connectivity between all the artists, and how everything is sort of connected. For example, we interviewed, Marco from Popsico, who connected us with Glenn, because it's all part of that Santa Barbara scene. And then, who else connected us? Oh, Kim Fox from one of the earlier seasons connected us with Linus,
Right.
And
then John
then
Strom used to live with Kim. I mean, gosh. Yeah, it's very fun.
It is.
And that connectivity creates a magic, I think, for me, where it's almost like the universe talking and the universe saying, yeah, you're supposed to be doing this.
Yeah, for sure. Another highlight that just dawned on me is when Blake Smith is telling that story about Costa Rica.
That week in Costa Rica, which ended up, and I might as well just finish the story. We get invited to this guy's house that's on this beach, and we come to a party, and we show up, and it's Gavin McInnes, the founder of Vice, and it's his house, and he's just there like, oh, you rockers from America, come on in. And went in, and there was I will not say who the other people were in the house, but we were like, holy shit. And there were literally mountains of cocaine. It was pretty insane. And then we went that night. It was New Year's Eve. And we got invited to another party. We had to climb up in the pitch black up this hill. We get up there, and it's Joaquin Phoenix's house.
Jesus Christ.
And so we're and he's just like, hey, I got some stuff set up in the backyard. You guys look like you're musicians. And we're like, we are. And so he's like, can you play some Prince songs? And we were like, we can. And we got up and we played Joaquin Phoenix's New Year's Eve party. and we were like kind of a hit. So we were like, whatever. It was very dark at night, and there were no street lamps or anything. And I remember we were just like trying not to walk off the road into the ditch. And all of a sudden we're walking, and there were these howler monkeys that would just sit in the fucking tree, and you couldn't see them because it was pitch black. They wait till you're right underneath them. And if you've ever like heard a howler monkey in the wild, they were like, so we're walking up to Joaquin Phoenix's house, and like as one does, and the howler these monkeys just let loose on us, and a friend of ours fell off the road. So we're trying to like pull him up, and these monkeys are throwing shit at us. And
it's fucking great.
That wasn't even the best monkey story from the trip. We were like eating breakfast one day, like sitting outside, and one of these like little white-faced motherfuckers, I don't even know what breed it was, comes by, and Christian Webb had his wallet sitting on the table, and we were just like drinking orange juice outside one morning, and this monkey jumps off the tree and grabs his wallet and goes back up the tree, and Christian starts yelling at this monkey. Like the locals just thought we were nuts, and we were like the only white people in the village, the only stupid Americans. And Christian's like, fuck you, you fucking monkey, give me my wallet, I need my wallet. And the monkey from like, no shit, like 20 feet away, throws his wallet, and it lands right in his orange juice. He's all over him. And then the monkey I swear, started swearing back at Christian in whatever monkey language it was speaking. It's like covered in orange juice, and the monkey runs off. And we were like, well, monkey 1, Christian 0. We're flying back to the States, and we were spending one night in San Jose before flying back. And we're there, and we go out into the town, and we go to some casino, and the casino gets robbed while we're like, this is all fucking true. This has all happened in like a 24-hour period. The casino gets robbed while we're in it. This guy just comes in, and he's like, Yankee dies! And bam, 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 bam.
Was it Yosemite Sam?
Yeah. So we're all diving beneath the like casino tables, like as this guy shoots the place up, and they rob all the dealers and everything. And then we're like, normal people would have just gone back to their hotel at that point. We're like, no, let's go have one more drink. And we walk into what we thought was like a dance club, and it turns out to be a brothel. And so we're
Jesus
like in
Christ,
a Costa Rican whorehouse, and we get the same thing where this guy's like, you look like you're in a band. Do you want to get up and do a couple of numbers? So we're like, oh, sure. So the guy's like, what's the name of your band? And Rick said something to the guy. I couldn't hear it. And so we get up there. The guy announces, he's like, blah, blah. I don't speak Spanish. He's like, blah, 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 blah. Oh, Chicago, blah, 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 blah. Michael Jordan. Blah, 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 blah. Rough customer. And Rick had named us Rough Customer. And we got up in this played like an hour and a half at like 3 a.m.
That's fucking amazing.
Costa Rican prostitutes. Yeah, I forget. What was the question?
Are you still vacationing with the Webb brothers?
No. Christian moved to Australia. He got married and had a couple kids, but they're coming back to the States to play some shows in Colorado this summer. I was thinking about flying out and seeing if we could
recapture the magic.
Oh, man.
That is just...
That whole episode, if that episode was just known for him talking about the Costa Rica thing, if it was just known for him talking about the 3 porn stars and a donkey,
yeah.
If it was just known for him talking about
in the record executive's house,
right? The Buffy the Vampire Slayer losing her virginity thing. I mean, there's probably 5 or 6 mouth agape moments in that episode where you're like, this guy either is a fantastic bullshitter or has lived one of the most interesting lives on record. And I think it's the latter. I think he's just really had a wild ride. And for him to say at the end of it, you guys got me to talk about stuff I've never told anybody.
Yeah.
Oh, so awesome.
Yep.
Because honestly, I went into that just like a simple fan of the band. I like Fig Dish. I like Caviar. I like his music. I really didn't know what we were getting into. And I think about 30 minutes in, you and I both realized that we had a tiger by the tail on that one.
Yeah. I also enjoyed interviewing Marco because what I learned from Marco is how vibrant that Santa Barbara music scene was. When we think of music scenes in cities, Santa Barbara, when it comes to California, Santa Barbara isn't always at the top of the list. It's LA, San Francisco, maybe even San Diego to some extent, but there were some pretty fucking great bands that came out of Santa Barbara.
For sure.
Yeah,
it was a fascinating conversation. That's probably the closest that we've come to doing a true documentary,
yeah.
And probably the closest that we've come to a truly abandoned album, just because of the tragedy of the singer passing and the story behind it.
Yeah.
I'll give you another highlight.
Please do.
When you told me we were going to interview a honky tonk band.
Oh, yeah.
I really thought you were full of crap. I was like, really, dude? Like, I'm not a country music guy. It is not my wheelhouse at all.
Yeah.
But the rapport we established with Ryan, and it was like one of those, like, we quickly realized, oh, we're all 3 just massive music nerds.
Uh-huh.
And as it was like, oh, you host that show on the Summit FM out of Akron. And like we started piecing connections together and
again, connectivity.
But we had done enough research to kind of know like where we wanted to steer it, not knowing that he really is one of the world's leading experts on the Americana genre. And I think that the conversation that we had with him was just fantastic.
I have my own radio show and I have my own radio station.
Get out.
Yeah, I run a radio station called the Americana Roundup. It's at AmericanaRoundup.com. It's free for people to listen to. It's a 24/7 streaming channel that I curate, I program. It's unhosted. There's no commercials. You know, I've loaded thousands of songs in, classic rock, Western swing, classic country, Bakersfield, all this stuff that we're talking about. And so I've slowly but surely, you know, kind of become a bit of a musicologist.
That's great.
A little bit. And then I have a radio show every Sunday morning on a radio station here in Akron.
Please tell me it's the Summit.
It is the Summit.
In addition to having lived in Cleveland, I currently live in Alabama, but I took the best part of Ohio when I left, which is my wife, who was born in Warren. And so, you know, a lot of time spent in that Kent, Akron, Warren area. And the Summit's a killer radio station. I feel like we could talk for another hour so easily.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we absolutely
for sure.
could.
And I'll tell you what, it's always so. Oh, thank you. It's always so much fun talking to other music lovers because I mean I am a literally a music nerd and I live and breathe music. I love it. And obviously I think that shows in what we do as the Shootouts and all of us in the band are that way. And it's always fun to talk to other like-minded folks that really truly, you know, like digging deep when it comes to talking about music. And so I really, truly appreciate you guys asking me to be here.
No, man, thanks for doing it.
So in closing, Akron boasts LeBron, Devo, the Black Keys, Earthquaker Devices, and the Shootouts.
And the Pretenders, please, for the love of God.
And the Pretenders. I know, I'm sorry.
And the Pretenders, for crying out loud. And listen, don't let Chrissy Hynde find out you left her off a list.
Yeah, right?
Chrissy doesn't get left off of many of Keith's lists.
We could have easily gone 3 hours with Ryan. And I know you, it's talking about stuff hitting the cutting room floor. I know you cut a lot of interesting conversation out just to get that down to close to an hour. But the Shootouts are one of my favorite episodes of season 4.
And I might add, in that episode, I loosely proposed my third album theory. And I said to Ryan that this is their third album, Stampede, out now. Highly recommend it. I said, this is their third album. I bet it's going to do very well for you. And lo and behold, I think it's definitely in the top 10 Americana charts. I think it might have even hit number 1. So
they are crushing it. We caught them just before they hit the Grand Ole Opry.
Yeah.
You know, they're about to go on tour. So if you're watching this and maybe have checked out some of the other episodes, that's one to circle back to for sure. Like he's just a hella interesting dude.
Yeah.
And the conversation really was like pretty lively.
And on brand for music nerds.
Yes. Yeah. Like I can easily imagine the three of us sitting in his basement, just like rummaging through his CD racks going, oh, this one's cool. Let's talk about this.
Yeah. You know, it was a delight for me as well was Tierney Tuff.
Hell
and the
yes.
Pauses. What a lovely interview.
I think that band, you know, because in the intro to the podcast, you say, you know, we're talking about albums that maybe have been lost over time or some artists that are up and coming that we think you should know about. I'll never forget my first impression of the Pauses. I was like, why doesn't everybody know about this? And why didn't I know about this? Like I was mad at myself. So when I reached out to her, I was really happy she said yes, because I think their music is, I think it's smart music.
For sure.
I think it's both musically and lyrically interesting. And that conversation was terrific. I mean, because you hear their music and that's not a band that you think, oh, Jay Robbins, like the guy from Jawbox should produce that band. And yet they have this terrific relationship with him that probably does inform sort of the post-punk elements of that band. And they almost do themselves a disservice calling themselves a beat boop band. I mean, the synths are important. The electronic elements of their music are important. But again, and if you have no idea what we're talking about, go back and listen to the episode, because it's a very interesting episode. The Chad Fisher conversation, I mean, that's just one of the most interesting human beings on the planet. And he hits so many high points for me. I mean, I legitimately was a School of Fish fanboy in 1991, so into that record, so deeply into that record. But to hear him talk about, I was playing drums with Lisa Loeb and went from Lisa Loeb to School of Fish, and School of Fish to Laszlo Bain, and the whole Scrubs opening song happened, and then going into Colin Hay. I mean, his whole career is just, God, he's so interesting. And again, so flippin' nice to us.
And again, feeding into the connectivity, when we brought up Paul Heck, who was at Brown University with Chad, with Lisa Loeb, and I'm sorry, I forget the guy's name from School of Fish who passed away.
Oh, yeah, Josh Clayton Felt.
Yeah. So they were all at Brown together, and fascinating. And Paul's an interesting dude. He's a guy, I don't know, man. I think he is, for those that don't know, he's responsible for the No Alternative CD, a generation-defining album, or CD at that point. Yeah.
And of course, I was out. I had surgery. Who needs the gallbladder anyway? Take it out.
It's my turn to operate. Operate? Butterfingers.
It's Operation the Wacky Doctor's Game. Batteries not included.
Yeah, I felt like I was being educated, and I learned new stuff. Like the angle about, was it Soul Asylum, or who was it that the record label was pissed off that radio started picking up?
Soul Asylum.
Because the head of the label comes in. I can't believe radio is picking up this stupid compilation single, and it was a cover song, wasn't it?
It was
a stupid cover song, and instead of picking up another song from our record and rah 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 rah, that was all new to me and deeply interesting.
He's a really interesting dude, and now he's making really fucking good music.
I'll tie it back to something we just talked about, that Facebook group, Archers of Loaf to Zampano. This week, the guy who wrote the book, so remember, Paul told us there's a book coming out about this compilation. The guy who wrote that book is a member of that group and posted a link. He's like, hey, everybody, here's the book. You can order it now. And I dropped in the comments. I was like, oh my God, we just talked to Paul. And he's like, oh, he was amazing and so helpful in writing this book.
Awesome.
And I almost wanted to be like, oh, I wish I had known that you were a part of this group 6 weeks ago, because we would have tied you in and brought you on the pod and had you talk about the book. But that's what follow-up episodes are for.
That's why there's next times. But I'm sorry, I had to get that in there.
For sure. And we're open to a part 2, because when you end a conversation with someone of the caliber of Jeremy Chatelain, and he says,
we didn't get to the helmet years.
We could probably do an entire episode just on the helmet years. Well, we should.
Yeah. And we will.
And that space that maybe Helmet and Quicksand were, and a lot of the hardcore contemporaries were unique in, that space started to get much more crowded. Listening back to this record, I feel like it stands head and shoulders above all of its peers. And I would include some of the Helmet catalog and the Quicksand catalog with that. I really do think it's one of the best records of the genre, and unique. I don't think that there is another band exactly like Handsome.
I get warm, fuzzy feelings when you say that. I get like, people reach out to me via social media or whatever way still, and they have deep feelings about the Handsome record. Don't get me wrong, for all the time we spent not getting along, we also busted our asses and rehearsed like 5 times a week for hours at a time, just loud as fuck and just going for it, you know? And we put a lot of energy and effort into the songs. I don't think anyone in the band was like, I don't give a fuck, you know? I think the problem is that everybody cared a lot and had a slightly different vision of how this puzzle was supposed to fit together, and the personalities clashed.
I think I probably showed my colors on that episode in that the record just means a lot to me personally.
Yeah.
It's an important piece of my memories from that era. And to get him, it was one of the most candid conversations. I mean, for him to say, yeah, we didn't like one another.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And not sugarcoat it, just say, you know, I'm still proud of the work, and we did put a lot of work in. And to have all of that wonderful context of, yeah, I met Ann Wilson walking into the studio owned by Hart,
right,
where we recorded this album, and there's, you know, all of these, you know, there's another version of the single that we recorded with the guy that did the Hum record. Hey, I see the Hum posters behind you, and you know, if you get to mention Duct Tape, I get to mention my Hum posters
for sure.
Just a terrific experience, and there was a richness to that conversation because of the candor. It's deeply satisfying and very interesting, I thought, and have had that validated from a good number of fans who have listened to it and reached out and said, man, that was really special.
Awesome. That's nice to hear. That was a really fun one to put together, you know, because the conversation was so fluid, easy, comfortable, you know, that one was hard, as you know, hard to cut. That was hard because there was so much good stuff in there, and judging by the length, I got it to where I could. There's just so much when I'm editing these things. Some really tough decisions have to be made because there's some good shit that just can't cut it in. And for whatever reason, you know, it could be a myriad. It could be bad audio. Sometimes it is shitty audio, you know, but that one was one of the sheer delights to put together because he's such a lovely guy. Everyone has been lovely.
Yeah, there are no bad episodes in season 4.
No.
There was nothing I would omit or not want to talk about it. In fact, as when you said, let's do a season 4 recap, and I started kind of going back through them, I was like, oh, I could ramble about this episode for a good 10-15 minutes.
Sure.
And I felt that way about every single one of them.
And the one we haven't mentioned yet was the one that kicked us all off, Steve Brooks, which I know is a big one for you.
Yeah, hugely influential for me. And I think because I love where they stand apart. You know, there's a uniqueness to his music, and it's both of his major projects. I think Floor and Torch are because I tend to not like the over the top screaming vocal style that is very prevalent in metal.
Mm-hmm.
I like a vocalist that can sing, and Steve Brooks can really sing well, but they certainly don't lack in the heavy and the riff department. So the music is intensely interesting, and full confession, like I'm probably the most friendly with Steve of anybody we interviewed, and maybe that colored the conversation a little bit. Maybe my familiarity with him steered it in certain directions that we wouldn't go with other folks, but it's still interesting music, and it's still, I would still recommend it to anyone that's even a casual fan of either the genre or the band. I mean, if you're into doom metal, check out that Steve Brooks interview because he's great.
Yeah, it was
and borderline painfully honest.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth.
I was kind of poking and prodding him to say, we would get back together. And he's like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to resurrect the band. I'll still make music and I'll still do other things, but that project is done. And that was maybe not the response I was hoping for, as a fan. But that was an honest response from him. And I don't know that we would have gotten it if we didn't have the relationship. So that was cool.
Yeah. I want to talk about John, because what John Strom, what was interesting about him and I don't know, fortuitous timing, the connectivity aspect of it. He's good friends with
Kim
and Paul from Zero Boys, who we both interviewed earlier seasons. But that too was a great conversation. Here's a guy who, God, has done a lot, continues to do a lot, both artistically and behind the scenes, helping artists out, and I don't know, man, that was a really good one.
There were opportunities in that conversation with John to name drop some of his clients, because he is the attorney for some fairly high profile folks that we avoided intentionally to focus on his music. And I loved what he said, that, a part of his motivation when teaming up with Ed Ackerman and making that record Vestavia was he didn't just want to be that guy from the Blake Babies and the Lemonheads.
Right.
He wanted to have his own stamp. And to me, it's a premium example of a record achieving success on its own musical merits and withstanding the test of time, because I still can pop Vestavia on and listen to it start to finish and love every track. And I'll tell you what, it's another piece of what makes the episodes come alive for me is I share all of these experiences with my wife, who is kind enough to listen to them all, once they drop, and she gives feedback on everything. And is always so ridiculously supportive. But I played her that album. I played Vestavia for her before we talked to John.
Right.
And for her, it was, she's like, yeah, it's like a 7 out of 10. It's like, it's not going to change my life. And then she listened to the episode and she heard the conversation, and the way you insert the music in the conversation, where if we talk about a song and we go a little deep into the details on a song, you play the song and it gives you that context. She said it really bumped the album up for me from maybe a 6 or a 7 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10. I love that music now because I have stories around it. And it really kind of set a precedent for me, and that's maybe not even realizing that's what we were doing. That's kind of the goal, is to frame this and to have musical goalposts that if you hear the song and you hear the story, I think you're going to have a hard time not falling in love with these albums. So it's an interesting bit of context for how I prepare for the conversations with these artists, because you want to respect them and their time. You want to respect their music, but you also want to put it in a context that makes it appealing for other people, the listeners of the podcast. Like I said at the top of the hour, man, I think we have that core group that probably, just listen, maybe they've got a morning commute that's 1 episode long, and we're just we're just a part of their week, which is super cool. But the people that latch on and go, I like this artist and I like where you took them in the conversation, that's the most gratifying thing in the world.
I want to talk quickly about your wife and Jeremy, because they are both paramount to the April Fool's episode of the Slim Whitcomb Band. What you're hearing is the last known recording of the Slim Whitcomb Band. According to bass player Emma Dalton, this track was recorded in a tiny studio somewhere outside of Athens, Ohio, sometime in the wee morning hours after a gig at Ohio University. In our continued quest to find out what happened with the Slim Whitcomb Band, Geoff and I were able to track down Emma Dalton, who served as the bass player for the Slim Whitcomb Band. So welcome, Emma. Thank you for taking the time.
Hey, it's my pleasure.
So let's just start basic. Were you a musician?
No, no. I was not someone for whom that came naturally. I was always intrigued by the bass in particular after, going to a series of concerts in my college experience where it seemed like every female bass player was like the coolest, most chill girl in the room, and there was always a part of me that wanted to be that girl, and so that part of it probably was natural and came easily.
Hey, I still have a crush on Kim Deal, so
who doesn't?
I get it.
Who doesn't?
Your wife Heather portrayed Emma Dalton, the bass player for the fictional Slim Whitcomb Band, was kind enough to devote some time and energy to that, which made it so much more fun, and Jeremy was kind enough to give us the rights to use Cub Country music. So it was hats off to both. Yeah.
It's so funny because I'm not an actor. I've never been on stage as an actor. I know that you're a playwright, and so you've worked with a lot of people in that capacity. That's not something I am familiar with. But I do know enough about the process to know that in every acting performance, there are small shades of yourself and your true personality. So when I talked to Heather about taking on that role, because it really was acting, it's so funny that, she has confessed to me that seeing Kim Deal play the bass and all these other female bass players, like she really does want to learn to play the bass and become that person. So in that episode, even though it was April Fool's and it was just a gag, she took it seriously enough to kind of own the role and put some of herself into it. Because you had some great writing prompts and some character development that I was like, oh, Keith's obviously a playwright. This is obviously someone that's worked a script before.
Yeah.
But the participants to help out in the way that they did and kind of live action role play the thing, it was very, very fun for me. And I hope people listened to it and got a laugh out of it, because I know I did. I laughed the whole time, but I was in on the joke.
Yeah. I really, Steve and Heather were just fantastic in it. Just great, and it's so loosely scripted, not even really scripted. And once everyone settled into the roles, it was believable,
I would like to know, please email us, please email the show if you actually Googled Slim Whitcomb Band. I gotta know. Season 4 was a pretty special run of conversations. I'm intensely proud of it, man.
I think it's incredible. I just think it's incredible. I think it's for me, having done every episode, I'm proud of them all, but this season I just felt like the show came into its own.
Yeah.
It hit a groove. It's finally what I've always wanted it to be.
Yeah.
So it's just, so my hat's off to you for contributing and joining, and it's just been a fucking amazing season.
Yeah, I think because I came on about 2/3, maybe halfway through season 3, and that the Matt Mahaffey episode in season 3 still also just like what a conversation and what an interesting person.
So if any of you decide not to stay for the party, you must let me know before midnight. Of course, if you leave, I shan't be able to pay you anything.
We pull the curtain back.
Believe it or not, Jeff, you will not, I think it might even be that first or second episode way, way back. That is actually a phrase that I used in the original intro.
When I just remember one of the lady who still says Warren Zevon, no matter how many times I told her. And he says his own name. You can find video, and it's even on some of his records. He says his name, right?
Dave's rolling.
Welcome to Abandoned Albums, the documentary podcast where we peel back the curtain to try to figure out why some albums weren't as popular when they were initially released or have just been forgotten about over time. I'm your host, Keith R. Higgins. God, that sounds really douchey. So I was like, No. I already sound douchey enough. I don't need to exacerbate that. But no, it's been great. And I think we are swinging for the fences.
We're going to get some names that you don't know that by the end of the episode, you go, oh, I love this. I love this music. And I love, like, this is going to be, and I will encourage people to go check out the Spotify playlist. Now, all I think about is who do I want in my playlist? Who are we going to talk to next so I can make the playlist even better?
I'm not going to drop the name now, but I'm very excited for the first interview. But yeah, season 4 was great. I couldn't be happier. And season 5, I think, is going to be even better.
We set the bar so high, man. I feel like we need to be like out looking for, I don't want to say it. I don't want to jinx it. Season 5 is going to be amazing.
I think. We've got Cher lined up. I believe we've got some feelers out to Robert Plant.
Feeling pretty good about Sting.
Yeah, Sting that's almost a lock at this point.
Yeah.
So
gonna resurrect Prince.
Yes.
We're gonna talk to Tupac's hologram.
Please remember to replace the speaker on the post when you leave the theater.
Thank you, everybody, for listening, signing up, sending us notes, following us on the socials.
Oh, great. We're gonna put this on YouTube, and I forgot to change my name.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Dork. Biggest Diggus.
Good reference there.
I'd like for you to meet my friend Biggest Diggus.
Mo Austin having this like senior moment on me. I'll never forget it. I was like, okay, man, I'm glad you guys like the song. Just let me know. What do you want to do? And Mo Austin just went, you go to the theater and then you'll hear it there. And if it's in there, then you'll hear it then you'll know. And I was like, whoa.